Hi, my name is Joe and I run games, and the game that I'm running today is Draw Steel. Specifically, this is the something it's campaign diary of my Draw Steel game called A Study in Effluence. Today's diary is going to be all about respites and downtimes and how they work in Draw Steel and how awesome they are. So if that sounds cool to you, stick around. And also, if that sounds lame to you, then bear in mind that there's also going to be some cool plot stuff if you like cool plot stuff. When last we left our heroes, they were still in the Red and White caves. This feels like deja vu to me because I have already recorded this video, but when I did so, OBS ate my sound. Let's go check to make sure there's sound. Okay, there's sound. So this is the second time I'm doing this, but the first time you're hearing this, I'm going to try to make it sound awesome anyway. So remember all that time ago when we were in the Red and White caves? The PCs had just defeated the Bread Metal here in this awesome cave. And then the player of Titus had to leave, so this is where we pick up. Everybody's here at the table, and it is post-holidays. We are ready to go. So let's put everybody back on the map. Marta jumps into the pit, grabs the light, makes her way north, and is looking for tiny baby Franco, who she finds! Unfortunately for Franco, he is wrapped in this sort of herby, vomitous cocoon. At the time, I said that it was vervain because that sounded like a cool magical plant. But as it turns out, vervain is mostly a purple flower. I should have said something else like lemongrass or. Actually, moving on the giant theme, what is that stuff that's taking over the southern United States? Kudzu. I should have said kudzu. I'm going to change it to kudzu, and they're not even going to notice. I'm just going to say it's kudzu now. They'll never notice. If they sit down next session and they ask me and I say kudzu, they'll go, oh yeah, I remember now. So they get him out of that stuff. He's in bad shape, right? Not quite as bad a shape as his father was in, but pretty bad shape. And so the party goes into action, and by action, I mean they roll dice. This is sort of a collab between Marta, the battlefield medic, and Corinne, the alchemist. And they smush their dice together and smush their smarts together, and they manage to bring this boy around. They provide him with the correct first aid. Corinne throws together like an ad hoc, more like a smelling salts than anything else to wake this kid up, and they bring him back. Now he's still in bad shape. He's barely conscious. He's out of it. He is in need of food and water, but they can get him those things. They take their guide, Dorian. If I previously implied that their guide was named anything other than Dorian, I was wrong. And he runs them across the bridge, skeeter, 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 and into the important people chamber. The important people chamber is where they keep all kinds of stuff. It's where the leaders sleep and talk and hang out, and it's also where all their cool treasure and letters and stuff like that are. So they get in there, and the first thing they're doing is they are pulling off sheets and mattresses and carpets, and they basically construct like a big papoose to put Franco in so that they can backpack him back to his house. And while they're in there, there is all this treasure, and there's a couple of reasons. I think I made a slight misstep here, and so maybe you can learn from my error. But what I said to the players was, hey guys, here's all the red and white treasure, so you can just grab that. And they kind of felt like, well, no, that's not our treasure. That's the Red and White's treasure. This place was stolen from them. And, I told them at the time that Dorian said, please go ahead and take whatever you want because we can't use this stuff. And eventually what ended up convincing them was Dorian saying, hey, the people who were using this stuff are mostly dead anyway. Like there's like 25 of us left. But that still didn't really work for them. And I think in the future, if I want them to take treasure in a scenario like this, and they don't have to, I don't care, but loot is part of the game, right? So I think in the future, a better move might be to say, the Red and Whites are going to give you guys this chest of stuff in exchange for your aid. Because when it's a gift, then they're less likely to turn it down. Whatever. What we ended up saying was this. There's a bunch of cool magic items here. Let me run you down on the list. The list is cool. So they have some traps and mechanisms. They have barrels full of food and alcohol stores, which the PCs smartly left. They have a treasure room that contains, they have a map of the local area, including nearby monsters. They did take that. There were also in this room, and this is an idea that I stole from Matt Colville, and it's really genius. Letters that their leaders got from local threats, either asking for support or warning of dangers. And I just wrote those letters and handed them to the PCs, and they were a lot of fun. I'm actually, now that I think about it, I'm going to include the letters in the doobly-doo. So there will be a link to the letters. You can go down and check them out. My favorite one was a pair of letters from a local coven of hags that I had translated into Middle English so that my nerdy friends could have fun reading over those, and they were hilarious. One of the letters was from, what's that guy's name? One of the letters was from Arlo Magnus. Remember Arlo Magnus? Back from Session Zero, the bad guy? Anyway, he had, this is my favorite one, he had written a letter to the Raiden Whites, who he addressed as Mr. White, which is my favorite part of it, talking about how he couldn't identify himself because he needed to speak in secret. But everything about the letter screams that it comes from him, right? It's not even close to subtle. He literally said that he was going to be installed as the Prefectus of Taxation. But my favorite part is that after his super intelligent attempt to keep it anonymous, he had sent it on his own letterhead. So it literally said, like, from the desk of Arlo Magnus at the top, which is super fun. My players had a blast with that stuff. Also among the treasure here, a merry stash of coins, a cat. Nobody took the cat, but they could have if they wanted the cat. A magic dueling sword, and 4 black ash darts, which they did take. 2 healing potions, also taken. A mirror token project that had been started. There were 10 project points in it, so they just took that with them. This is a thing I do a lot. I'll say, hey, somebody here has started work on XYZ project. They've gotten this far in it, so if you want to take it, it's basically 10 project points that you can put into this project. They had other stuff, a hedgerows, a falcon feather from a falcon slain while diving. There's a feral boar tusk. There's dockwort sprigs. And if you look through the book, what you're going to find is that those are the material components for certain downtime projects. Basically, I just wanted to give them options. I also included books sufficient to count as resources for level 1 armor enchantments, implement enchantments, weapon enchantments, just in case anybody wanted to do any of those. They could have learned the language of the Raiden Whites, and there were also skill texts here. So basically, the skills that Raiden Whites have, right? Criminal underworld, forgery, brag, flirt, gamble, lie, persuade, other intrigue skills, and fishing equipment. So basically, the idea was, here's a bunch of stuff. And if you guys want to use any of this stuff for your downtimes, that's fine. Now, my players didn't really at that point understand that these things were requirements for downtimes. So what I said is, look, we're going to go into a respite after this, and you guys are going to want to engage in projects. Now, you don't know what those projects are yet. You'll find out later. But if you find one that you want to engage in that I have components for here, we'll just say you took the thing. It's not that big a deal, right? So like if they wanted to do a level 1 armor enhancement, we'll just say, okay, well, you took the books with you then. We don't need to, this isn't a survival horror dungeon crawler, right? So we can say, narratively, you guys took the stuff that will be helpful for you in the next respite, and you left the stuff that won't. No big deal. And that's what we did. From there, the PCs exit this place. They put Franco on their back. This time they did turn the waterfall off, and they go back through the softwood. Now, my players asked a very smart question. Hey, we had to do a montage scene to get here. Are we going to have to do a montage scene to get out? The answer is no. It's no for 2 reasons. The first one is because there's no rush. There's no consequences. You're just walking back out. The first time, there was a narrative reason. You were in a hurry, and there were tactical advantages to success or failure. I put them in there on purpose. But the real reason is this is just not interesting, right? So what I said is, look, as long as you guys take the same path to get out that you took to get in, I don't care. It just happened. It was literally within 24 hours. Let's not sweat it. We go back to the Chapata farm. Remember the Chapata farm? Having summoned a healer on their way out the last time, they find Sister Cavino, already present at the farm, already tending to Diego. She has already stabilized him, and he is in bad shape, but he's awake, he's alive, he's probably going to make a recovery. Maybe not 100% recovery. That dude's probably going to walk with a limp forever, but he's going to be okay. Obviously, he's super grateful. Many tears are exchanged. His son is still a little bit loopy until the next day, but the family is reunited. They give the PCs the standard, we owe you everything spiel. So if you ever need anything from us, do not hesitate to ask. And of course, the PCs humbly say, literally, what could you possibly offer us that isn't rice? Maybe something. You never know. They are still going to have trouble getting the rice harvested. However, Marta has a plan for this that involves Raiden Whites harvesting rice. Vanish also has a plan for the Raiden Whites. And let's just say that their two plans are mostly incompatible. Anyway, they rest there, they have breakfast the next day, and then they head home, and it is time for the actual respite. And now we begin our respite. But first, this is our first session after the holidays, so let's talk about presents. My wife got everybody these really cool resource trackers. Look at how cool that is. Shout out to Rebear the Whoosh on Reddit for the STI file. I don't know if they're the one that created this file in the first place, but they're the one that linked it. So I've been trying to find out who created it, but so far I have not dug up anything. If you created it, or if you know who created it, say something in the comments. Anyway, these printed out great. We printed them out in like 6 different colors. Everybody got one. I did the little white painting on the top, and they have a spot here to track your heroic resources, all the stuff that happens on your turn, your stamina, your recoveries, all that stuff. You put tiny D10s into these slots here, and little cubes into these other slots for counting. And of course, we got little cubes and little tiny D10s, and they're adorable, and they match. Most of them match. So we handed those out to everybody, and everybody was super pleased. All right, so let's talk about how respites work in Draw Steel. This actually isn't that complicated. A respite takes you spending 24 hours in a safe location. I actually changed that number in my game. My respites take a week. Why? Because the timeline of my games is different from the timeline of other games. I think 24 hours works perfect for a standard Draw Steel game, but I kind of like time to pass in my fantasy games, and there's no other way to make it pass. So that's what I do. Otherwise, you go from level 1 to level 10 in like a couple of weeks, and nobody wants that. It's fine. It makes for a cool, fast-paced game. It's just not my vibe. So you do whatever you want. But as you will see, I basically had to make no changes to make that make logical sense, because the time is an abstract concept anyway. So here's what I do. After you spend your respite time in a safe place, your victories become experience. So if you had 6 victories going in, you now have 6 XP going in. If you had 4 victories and 5 XP going in, then you now have 0 victories and 9 XP. You get it. You can do basic math. And that, by the way, is how you gain experience, and that is how you level in Draw Steel. You win stuff, and then you rest. The other thing that happens during a respite is you get all your recoveries back that you had spent. You get back any stamina that you had spent. And during that period, 24 hours or a week in my case, you may engage in one downtime project. And because mine takes a week, actually, this is probably true in classic Draw Steel as well. Like this isn't exclusive to my timing. I just call it out specifically because it takes so long. You can also do other things that are not specifically downtime projects. You have to be resting. You can't do anything strenuous. You can't go fight bandits. But you can engage in other activities. And basically, I say you get one over the course of a week. Sure, other stuff happens over the course of the week, but only one of them is going to matter. And if you are an observant person who does not play a lot of Draw Steel, you are saying to yourself, what on earth is a downtime project? And I'm about to tell you. Downtime projects basically come in 3 categories. 1, crafting. That's making stuff. And that is anything from airships to roads to magic weapons to stuff. Any sort of crafting falls under that first category, and there's a lot in there. Number 2, research. And research isn't just, Gandalf going to the stacks to try to figure out where the one ring is, which, by the way, took him like 10 years. Didn't it take like 10 years in the book? Holy shit, Peter Jackson. Anyway, but that also includes looking for lost knowledge, infiltrating enemy organizations, all kinds of cool shit falls under research. And then there's just sort of a catch-all miscellanea category, and that includes everything from community service to spending time with loved ones to just fishing, drinking, stuff like that. Okay. Does drinking fall under the category of spending time with loved ones? Do you count as your own loved one? Anyway, and then I call out one sort of non-project action just to make sure, especially for this game, that we are getting a feel for the city. I want these people to think, what do I do outside of my mechanical stuff, right? Who do I go hobnob with? And generally speaking, I want that non-project action to be something you do out in the town, some way you interact with people. Because that was the ask, right? Was to make this sort of a local, investigative, a more personalized experience. So that's what they get. Now I have a bunch of actions like downtime activities all prepped for myself. Here's a bunch of stuff you guys might want to do, up to and including building a freaking airship. Now I can't think of a reason the PCs would want to build an airship except the same reason the Raiden Whites wanted to build an airship, which is because it's awesome. But the thing you need to understand is not all these things take the same amount of effort. Let's say that Titus wants to build a road from his farm, which we're going to put right up here. Let's put it down here. This is obviously a farm. Let's say that he wants to build a road from his farm, back to the river here so that he can go fishing more often. What is that, about a mile? Okay. Then that means he needs 10 successes to build that road. Building a road, you need 10 times the number of miles in successes. Let's say that Marta wants to construct an airship. 3,000 successes. That one's going to take a while. The next question is, how do you accrue successes? Even easier. Just like with everything else in Draw Steel, you make a power roll. You roll 2d10. You're going to add a characteristic. You are going to add a skill if necessary. It is possible to get edges and banes on these. And then whatever number you roll, that's it. That's your result. So if you roll your 2d10 and you get 12, and your characteristic is a 2, then you have a 14. If you were looking for 15 project points in order to finish this thing, you're not done yet. If you were looking for 10, as Titus was in our previous example, you're done. You built the road. Yay! It's not quite that simple. There are some complications. Let's talk about them real quick because they're not hard. One, you may have noticed by now that some backgrounds come with a specific amount of project points. That is sort of like incomplete work, stuff that you finished before you became an adventurer. In Corinne's case, she has a box of miscellaneous occult nonsense that she carried into town with her, and that contains like 250 project points worth of stuff. So let's say in our previous example, Corinne had been doing a lore roll, and I had set the difficulty at 15, and she had gotten a 14. Well, she can say, well, I don't want to wait like a whole week or a whole adventure or whatever to finish this off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of those 250 project points. I'm going to dump it into this. Now I have 249 project points, and I have succeeded at my project, whatever that was. And that just means she had a start on this ahead of time. I think I read something about that. Hold on. And then she'll take a little notebook out of her box and go, oh yeah, there it is. Page 45, whatever. You get it. You can do that with any project you are working on, but once those points are gone, they're gone. So you might want to save them for something big. For example, if you have 250 project points, well, that could cut down on the amount of time it takes you to make an airship. That'd be pretty good. The other complication is events. A lot of projects, most projects, have optional events that can take place when you do the project. Kind of you choose when you roll on the events table and even whether you roll on the events table. Sometimes you choose not to. Sometimes you just pick an event on the table, and that sounds cool. Whatever. It's exactly like second edition treasure tables, which is to say, you take your dice out, and then you roll, and then you go, I rolled something stupid, and then you just grab something from the list. Isn't that what everybody did? And some of those events are good, and some of those events are bad, and some of them are neutral, and they're just neat. For example, let's say you're building a road, and you roll a 1 on your D10. That means before you make your roll, your crews uncover an ancient road that is going in the same direction that you are. And it is made with remarkable ancient techniques that you are unaware of. And that cuts your difficulty in half. Or one option, still for a road, could be that the local guild master, like a stonemason, has it out for you. And they start dragging your name through the mud. If this sounds like the sort of madcap thing that happens in an episode of Parks and Rec, yes. So your renown counts as 1 less than usual when building this road. All kinds of cool stuff can happen in there. What's renown? Oh, man. Basically, your renown, this is going to seem weird. It's how well renowned, it's how much renown you have. It's how famous you are. And it goes up as you level, and you can take, there are various perks and mechanics that can affect your renown, but a starting character usually has a renown of like 1, 2, maybe 3, that kind of thing. Well, once your renown hits 3, you can attract followers. Some of those followers are going to do research for you. Some of those followers might adventure with you, but some of them can do downtime projects for you. So you can say, oh, I've got a bunch of workers, and they're working on this road while I'm off adventuring. Or they're going to help me with this road while I am working on this road. And you get extra rolls and bonuses, stuff like that. So that can make your downtime projects go a lot faster. You get it? Because you're not building a road by yourself, are you? That would be exhausting. Too much work? Anyway, that's what renown has to do with downtime projects. It's a peripheral rule, but it does apply. Doesn't change anything I just said, though. So that's basically it. You pick a downtime project, you do work on that downtime project, and you continue amassing progress until you hit the target number, and then you're done. You can amass progress faster by asking retainers for help, and you can amass progress faster by using your existing project points, if applicable. And that's a respite. So now let's get into the story part and talk about what my players did with their respite. First things first, Vanish decides that he wants to get in good with the local Thieves Guild. I don't need those. So ear to the ground, pretty easy thing for them to do. He needs to meet with a guy named Fergus Kinch. Fergus is sort of a, how do we describe this? Sort of a roly-poly fellow who likes noodles and runs sort of a local thieves guild that is, we're going to call them small time. Smuggling, violence, burglary, robbery as needed. Something that is true of them that Vanish doesn't find out until later is that they don't really do killing if they can help it. Not because Kinch has any particular morals. It's just that killing is complicated, and it adds layers of complication to everything, so he prefers not to. So Vanish creates this random ID as some random Thessaly woman and goes to see Fergus Kinch at this noodle shop. Vanish says, how do I get in? And Fergus says, well, proving ground. You do some work for me, and if the work is good, then you're in. You don't get paid for this work. Vanish says, I'm in. What is the work? And Fergus says, well, I need you to go get some books. There is someone who has been operating a shop locally for a while. I don't know anything about her, and I would like you to get me some information on her so that I know what kind of business she does. Fine. That person is Marta. Meanwhile, back at Marta's shop, she has decided that she also wants to do some local business. Specifically, she wants to find someone to investigate the Raiden White caves to see if there are any untapped resources there and to go into some honest business, right? Maybe this can be a new income stream for the Raiden Whites to help them make up for all their lost Raiden Whites. Well, I give her a list of 3 names that she can choose from to meet with, and she also decides to meet with Fergus Kinch. Okay. So she goes to the noodle shop, literally passes Vanish on the way from the noodle shop, doesn't recognize him because he looks like a Thessaly woman, and goes straight into the place. I set that up as a negotiation, and is about midway through the negotiation that Marta sort of accidentally hits upon Finch's motivation, and that goes pretty well. Ultimately, what Finch ends up saying is, I'm going to send you my boy Crick. He is going to take one of the sappers from the military that he knows into the softwood, and they will investigate this cave. At this point in time, Vanish goes to Marta's shop and changes their appearance again to look like Marta. Walks into the shop, walks right past Marta's niece, who is sitting up front, just manning the shop, goes into the back, digs through some books until he uncovers 2 months worth of books that this Kinch guy wants and copies them onto some paper, takes off. And Marta is none the wiser. Bum, bum. I still think Marta doesn't know. So now Vanish is in with Kinch, and Kinch is doing business with Marta. And as far as Kinch is concerned, that is the weirdest coincidence ever. This woman just happened to walk into my shop right after I sent someone to investigate her. Now, Kinch is not too suspicious yet, because there's no way Vanish could have known who they were going to be asked to look in on ahead of time. So, but it feels weird. It feels weird, doesn't it? If you were the head of a thieves guild, you would think it felt weird too. While this is going on, Titus is doing some research, mostly into the letters and maps that they got from the Raiden Whites. So he does some research into the hags, finds out that hags are quite territorial, that they have a coven, and likely a patron that is a monster or a powerful cult of some sort. And he does some research into a spot on the map labeled Felling Tyne, discovering that it is one of the northernmost cities in Rainmar. It used to sort of be the edge of the softwood, and then the softwood started moving north. On the map, on the map, you can see that there was once this sort of area that was pushing up north. This didn't start this way, it started growing this way. And that is when Thessalon decided to build this wall and man them with forts, because they were like, oh, these people are just going to take over our entire country by way of mushrooms growing over everything. So that is where these forts come from. The softwood is sort of the origin of these forts along the Rainmar wall, the wave wall, as it were. Or rather, the rain wall, I'm sorry. This is called the rain wall. This part is called the wave wall. You get it. You get why. You can see it. Back to the town. So Titus uses his downtime project to do this research. Corinne is making those potions from several videos ago to fix our still frozen Raiden White dude, our still stone Raiden White, because she said she would, and also because the player of Corinne wasn't there, so that was the best I could do. And that is sort of the end of that session. This respite is 2 respites. There's nothing to stop you from taking as many respites as you want. If your players think they can get away with it, they can take 5 or 6 respites, get a lot of shit done. But while they're getting a lot of shit done, the bad guys are getting a lot of shit done, as my players are about to learn upon taking a second respite. Respite number 2, the player of Corinne is back. Actually, all our players are back. And so now we have a full table, and we are ready to do more respiting. How doth the little busy bee? No, respite. I see. So by now, Crick and his sapper friend have gone to the softwood to investigate what is going on there. And the first thing that we learn, let me back you up. Mechanically, at the table, the first thing we did was Corinne's stuff. What I ended up doing narratively was Corinne stuff, pause, everybody else stuff. Now we go back to Corinne stuff. I'm not going to do that for you. For you, I'm going to tell the story in a way that is more narratively satisfying so that I don't have to stop Corinne stuff in the middle to make it dramatic. You'll see why. By now, Fergus Kinch is pissed. He doesn't care that Vanish is using a fake ID. He doesn't care that he's being made to do work with rats. What he cares about is the fact that clearly Vanish and Marta are conspiring against him. He doesn't like being fucked. And as far as he's concerned, they done fucked him. Here's the hilarious thing. They're not. They didn't even know they were both working with him until I reminded them at the table. Well, I think the player of Vanish knew, but Tracy didn't know. The player of Marta was like, I have no idea what you're even talking about. She did not know that the guy she was talking to was the same guy that Vanish was talking to. And that is because she spends a not insignificant portion of our game managing our children. Thank you, by the way. But so sometimes she misses stuff like that. So this was as big a surprise to her as it was to her character. But there's just no reason that Kinch should assume. Listen to me. So you run a thieves guild. This lady comes to you and says, hey, I want to do some business with you. You send her out to this shop to steal some numbers. The shop of the same lady that comes in to do business with you the minute she leaves. Now, immediately that's a coincidence. When that first person comes back, she's like, hey, I want to do some work. I have some friends. My friends need work. I think that we can help each other out. And you're like, okay. And then it turns out that her friends are fucking Raiden Whites. The same Raiden Whites that this woman from the shop just sent you to investigate. What are the odds? What are the odds that these people are not conspiring? The odds are 100%, but he doesn't know that. There's no reason for him to assume that. So as far as he's concerned, they fucked him. They manipulated him, and he doesn't like it. So he's like, look, you're Raiden Whites. They seem like nice guys. I will do business with them. But if you ever expect me to do business with you again, what is going to happen right now is you are going to come clean. And you are going to swear to me that you are not going to manipulate me in the future. And you are going to tell me what kind of shit you are bringing into my town. Because nobody comes in like this with the skills that you have to stir up shit if they're not running from something. That's not necessarily true, but it is true in this case. So Vanish goes from being a pleasant Thessaly woman to Vanish, and says, "Look, my name is Vanish. I come from up north. I had an organization up there. They burned me and they killed me, and I would like to avoid them if at all possible. That's the trouble I bring, and I'm going to try to keep it off your doorstep. Here's the skill set I have. Can we still work together?" This was yet another negotiation. It's a little bit of back and forth, but pretty early on, Vanish, again, almost accidental. Look, it's not that hard, right? It is not that hard when you're dealing with the head of a thieves guild to accidentally strike upon their motivation. It's only one of a few things. But in this case, he struck upon Kinch's greed and made it very clear that both the Raiden Whites and Vanish could be very profitable for him. And the other thing that he said that was very important was like, look, I'm actually not going to need much from you in the way of resources. I'm just going to be net positive. I only need you for connections. That seemed like a good investment to Kinch. So he's like, okay, fine. However, your friend is not part of my organization, and she has to do business like a normal person. And that is a thing that Vanish agreed to. Okay, now we all know where we stand. So Vanish and Crick go out. They talk to the Raiden Whites. They work some stuff out. There's a little bit of negotiation, some back and forth. They meet with Marcel. Marcel, the Raiden White, says that he is going to go back to his people, and he's going to make them the offer. And the suggestion is that occasionally, if work needs to be done outside the walls, or if things need to move through the softwood, or if Kinch needs someone to do work that doesn't look particularly human, the Raiden Whites might be helpful there. They are agreed. They're probably still going to end up farming some rice, not because they need to, but because the party needs them to and because they owe the party. Basically because the Chapata family needs it done. Marta, having no more business to do, chose to use this time to engage in the downtime action called spending time with loved ones, because Marta has a niece that she needs to spend some time with. And she rolled poorly.
He chose poorly.
Now, also, you have to bear in mind that the project goal on spending time with loved ones is actually quite high, because it gives you a solid benefit. And the idea is you're not just spending, a day with your loved ones, you're spending regular quality time with them. And every once in a while, that gives you a little boost. And the thing that it does is it gives you extra stamina for your next adventure. Well, Marta's not anywhere near extra stamina yet. She rolled badly. So what we decided is that Marta did spend time with her niece and her niece's really irritating friend Janice, who is just the fucking worst. Oh, Janice, come on. During this same time, Titus decides to pick up where Marta has left off. The airship thing is going to be Marta's project, but Titus contributes. And he does pretty well, actually. He rolls pretty well. Now, he doesn't roll 3,000 well. Creating an airship is going to be a very long-term project for these people, but he gets a little bit of work in there. Now back to Corinne. This is part downtime and part adventure. They're sort of woven together. That's fine. You can do that. So Corinne sends a note to Siobhan. Remember Siobhan? She's the book lady, the one who kicked Corinne out of her store. And she's like, hey, I would like to meet you outside your shop after closing and explain myself. So she goes to talk to Siobhan, and she tells her the truth. She's like, I have no idea what happened. As soon as the first thing I remember is being kicked out of your shop, and I was hoping you could fill me in on that. So Siobhan basically tells her what happened. The Corinne was in her shop. She was looking over some tomes on summoning, and something in her box started to interact with some of the glyphs in the summoning area. Under ordinary circumstances, that is something that Siobhan might handle gently. However, if you recall, there was an important politician having a meeting with an important nun in her shop, and they were doing so in secret. And the last thing Siobhan needed was Corinne accidentally summoning some demon lord or whatever, so she booted her right out. She doesn't know who this lady is, and stay out. Now, Siobhan knows a lot about what goes on in the town, so she sort of accidentally lets drop that she knew that Corinne had only been in town a short time, and had basically been making the circuits, having come in on a military caravan. This is news to Corinne. And that is about the time where they heard someone crying and praying down the alleyway, sort of behind Marta's shop. So they creep down the alleyway, Corinne in front because she's an adventurer, Siobhan in the back because she's a cowardly bookseller, and they see a young man in the alleyway. And what he's doing in the alleyway is dying. There is this black growth that has taken over his body. It is starting to seep out of his nose and his mouth, and he is saying childhood prayers to himself. He is doing so, by the way, in Chish, which is a language. And Corinne understands him. So now we know something else about Corinne. We know that she speaks Chish. There's really only a very few places that they speak Chish in Thessalon, but the primary place is the Three Sisters region, which is back to the map. It is right here. The Three Sisters is so called because it is made up of three lakes, the Oglaga, the Ogdara, and the Ognimi, each of which have three cities around them. Threes are a very big motif in this area, so that is why this area is called Three Sisters. And you can think of this area as being sort of like little tiny Switzerland, right? Like it's a little bit mountainous, it's a little bit fieldy. They have flowers, it gets a little chilly. The people from here tend to be blondie or gingery, and they speak Chish. Corinne, knowing where she is, kicks the door and calls for Marta. And Marta busts out into the alleyway, expecting trouble. And instead, she sees this young man dying on the ground, and she goes to sort of pick him up and gently move him off to the side, seeing if she can do him any good. And he can't quite make her out entirely, but he seems to be able to see her a little. And he can hear her voice somewhat, because the last thing that Arlo Kester says before he dies is Marta's name. And then he turns into a rot zombie. What follows is a very brief combat where Marta and Corinne demolish a rot zombie because it's a very low challenge. And it isn't until the combat is complete that Marta is able to focus on what she's actually seeing before her. I mean, she knew before, but she didn't have time to dwell on it. Arlo Kester was the youngest soldier in Titus's Exploratores unit, someone that Marta has known for maybe 15, 20 years at this point, although she never hears from him, like an old war buddy. Siobhan knows, because she is Siobhan, that he came into town on the same military convoy as Corinne. And she knows that he had sort of been poking around town, singing songs at a few hostels, and she knows that he had poked his nose in at a church when he came into town because the church is nearby. So what this begins to paint is a picture. And the way I say this to my players is this. This is a game set in what would otherwise be a normal adventuring world, where you guys would have madcap draw steel adventures. But this part of it is darker and more painful and more lethal. There exists another world in which Arlo Kester was the missing fifth member of your adventuring party. An old war buddy of Marta and Titus, who came into town on a caravan with Corinne, who had been working as a troubadour, whose job would have been to keep your spirits light and to tell tales of your adventures as they unfold. But this is not that kind of world. This is not that kind of setting. This is the kind of setting where immediately upon entering town, Corinne lost her memories, and this young man clearly lost his freedom and later his life. And so the PCs do what PCs do. They investigate. First, they make their way to the main temple. They talk to the priest there. They go to the temple of Echos Artemo and talk to the head priest, Juna Dunaman. Juna Dunaman is a very serious sort of priest, and he tells them, yes, the young man came in. He asked me for a blessing. He talked a little bit about the caravan he came in on, and then he asked for the names of some places where he could perform for coin. He said he was looking for friends, and until he found them, he would need to pay his way. And the priest gave him the name of a wine bar, the name of a hostel, and the name of sort of a food club with a stage. And so the PCs went to the Papanapista, which is the name of the wine bar, and they asked around after him there, and he did perform there once. And they went to the hostel, the Overland Insulae, and they spoke to an older woman there who runs the hostel, and they found out that not only had he been there, he had been staying there for quite a while and up and disappeared. She even gave the PCs his bag the kit bag that he came into town with that he had left there the day he had gone out looking for temples. He said that he had a curse upon him that he needed to have lifted. We also find out that Corinne had been staying at that hostel, and the nice old lady gave her back her bag, which contained mostly clothes and socks. What we find out from the old lady is that Corinne and Arlo both came into town on the same military caravan that brought a man named Leon Dotsk. He came in with the convoy. He's a commissar, which means he's doing special training at the fort. And Titus knows this guy. He's basically here to teach aquatic combat techniques. So the PCs schedule a meeting with Dotsk. Now, as it turns out, Dotsk is sort of a braggart, very anti-government for a guy who works for the military, very into fine dining, and he is very overly confident in himself, especially his ability to read people, which is a skill he does not have, something that Marta learns very quickly. And he talks at great length about the trip in and how they picked up Corinne at Fort Wavewall and brought her in this way, and how they had previously picked up the young man at Fort Rainwall. And he talked about how the young man would tell stories to them at night, sing songs for the caravan, how Corinne would mix poultices to help keep the horses on track and help keep the men alert in the morning after too much drinking, that kind of thing. According to him, it was a lovely trip filled with happy people playing cards. And there was no indication that the young man was sick or upset or cursed or in any sort of trouble. But the fact that he's so convinced that that is the case led Marta to believe that maybe it was not so much the case. Anyway, one thing he was very certain about was that Arlo Kessler was seeking out priests and priestesses and temples and shrines when he came to town. And the only shrine in town that he could have gone to that they haven't already investigated was Sister Cavino's shrine. So the PCs set off to once again butt heads with the mysterious Cavino sister. And that is where this study in effluence ends. We talked about respites, how they work, what they do, how you might use them, how I used them, and we told the story of how my PCs sat through 2 respites and stumbled onto an accidental adventure. Tune in next time, where we might find out what the sister is really up to.